I'm very pleased to welcome Matan. Matan works at the Family Heritage and Jewish Genealogy Center in the Jewish Historical Institute in Warsaw, which is where I first met him 2 years ago. That's nice. Which is one of the Jewish Historical Institute was one of the first in Europe to provide genealogical services. Matan is originally from Israel, where he obtained a degree in history from Hebrew University, and he moved to Poland over 4 years ago. Matan, the floor is yours. Could I ask you, please, phones on silent or turn on?
Thank you very much for the kind invitation and introduction. I'm very happy to be here and meet all of you here today and the people of IGRA. I am living contemporarily in Warsaw, Poland, working for the Jewish Historical Institute, the building you can see on the screen on the left-hand side. For the past 4.5 years, I'm in Warsaw, and our institute is quite a historical one. Not only the materials it has and the objectives of its research, but also in its building and memories. The picture you see here is from around 1936. The building next to it on the right is the Great Synagogue of Warsaw in Płomackie Street. Currently not available for visitors as the Germans stopped it in 1943. The buildings on the left, which was the Central Library for Judaistic Studies, had survived the bombings and the fire and is our place of sit. With Polish and Hebrew in my head, so my English just deteriorated a little. So this is where we sit for the past over 7 years. And I would like to talk to you about a few things. One is how to search for your Jewish family roots in Poland. The second thing is how we help you search for your Jewish family roots in Poland. And the third thing, which is also quite interesting, what will go on this summer in Warsaw. Some of you know or have been to the last IAJGS conferences. The next annual conference on Jewish genealogy held by the IAJGS will be held in Warsaw, August 5th to 10th of this year. And the Jewish Historical Institute is a very happy and satisfied co-host of this event, along with the Polin Museum to the History of Polish Jews. We are helping to organize the conference as there is no local Jewish genealogical society in Poland, and we are the local experts on the matter. And I would be happy to answer your questions and tell you a little about this conference as well. So, does this sound okay? I'm not a very experienced rock star. So this is our institute today. This is how it looks, more or less the same. Our offices is actually this windows right here when you enter on the left-hand side. And this building has a great history. In the 30s, it was inaugurated by Professor Moshe Shor, a rabbi and doctor of history teaching in Lviv University and Warsaw University. And it was dedicated as a temple, mikdash, of Jewish wisdom and history. It was inaugurated as a library and later became a place for Jewish studies. People like Rabbi Abraham Yoshua Heschel studied there and taught there 1 year before emigrating to the States. But it was the central place for, today would say liberal Judaism, but modern Judaism studies in Warsaw and Poland, which was then the world's biggest Jewish community. During the wartime, the building was periodically inside the Warsaw ghetto boundaries, and for those reasons, it hosted many functions for, I would say, the Jewish community and Judenrat in Warsaw. It was a tachanat klita, a place of entry for refugees sent into the Warsaw ghetto from Poland itself and from Germany. and it was also a place where the main Jewish organizations sat, from the Jewish Self-Help Committee to the Joint Distribution Committee, sitting in Warsaw. And for these reasons, the head of the joint at those times was called Dr. Raanana, a historian and a civic activist, and he organized a group of some 20 to 30 people, depending on the time, understanding the gravity of the situation and the uniqueness of the situation in Jewish history and in history, such the foundations of the Warsaw Ghetto, such a huge community being locked, kept in close quarters with no connection to the outside world, and understanding that it can get to horrible places as it did, and also understanding that documenting this history, these events, will not be made by the Germans, will not be properly made by official Jewish institutions as they have to cooperate with the Germans. It can only be made underground. It can only be made by us, something by us and for us. And in a great book written by Dr. Sam Castle of Indiana University, if I'm not mistaken. No, I am mistaken, but I don't remember his where he teaches right now. Who will write our history? This is the main thing. We will write our history. If we don't write it the way we see it and the way we experience it, no one will write it accurately for us. Immanuel Ringelblum and the group of activists and archivists who wrote and documented their lives in the Warsaw Ghetto and the lives of the Jews in Warsaw Ghetto meticulously, and understood they had to hide it in metal cans and milk boxes for it to survive. And there were 2 such hidings that were found after the war. And if you would ask me what is a great treasure of the Jewish Historical Institute, or JIH in Polish, it would be 2 things. First, it would be the researchers, the people sitting there devoting their professional lives and career to the research of Polish Jewry in all its aspects. If it's literature, religion, history, organizations, etc. And the second thing would be this archive, the Ringelblum archive or the Oneg Shabbat archives. And I will talk a little about this, as a month ago the institution opened the first of its kind exhibition where those materials are being shown to the public in the originals with interpretation, and the biggest display of this collection, which is kept in our institute. The institute after the war became the headquarters for the Central Committee of Polish Jews, a committee to organize Jewish matters after the war. The amount of chaos after the war, with refugees, Holocaust survivors coming back to Poland, trying to pick up the pieces of their lives, trying to find family members and close ones, and trying to make a living, connect to relatives abroad, and pick up their pieces and go on with their lives. There was a governmental institution called the Central Committee for Polish Jews, and it was sitting in this building until 1951 when it dissolved, and only one branch of this committee stayed, the Historical Committee. The Historical Committee is probably the first place in the world where Holocaust was researched properly with academic tools, and it was done in preparation for the Nuremberg trials, when the prosecutors for the Allied forces wanted to research parts of German crimes dealing with Jewish persecution and the Holocaust. The place they came to, the place that held the most documentation and had contacts to most survivors and witnesses, was our place, Jewish Historical Institute in Warsaw. So I am very proud to be a link or a chain in this very quite long link. And this is one of the longest standing active Jewish institutions in Warsaw. It remained a Jewish Historical Institute, a research facility for Jewish matters under communist rule, which is really not common. Most Jewish institutions were closed, were forced to close. Most Jews left Poland. under communist rule in the 50s and 60s, late 60s. And this is a long-lasting beacon for this history and these stories, and we try to keep on this very honorable tradition. What we do at the genealogical department is a fraction of this. We, as I said before, are helping people find out about information about their family history, and sometimes not only family members, but also researchers. If people are writing a biography of an artist and a scholar, or just anyone, nowadays it's quite common to talk about his family background. If you would open an encyclopedia 50 or 70 years ago, usually it would say, you know, born in this place at this year, and then studied in this university, or what he did in life. And more we see the understanding of the background and people's lives as something that has to do with what they became later in life. Which family did he come from? How did he grow up? What was the background of the family? What language did they speak at home? Where did he go to school? How was his childhood? Those kind of questions which biographies even 30 years ago would not very much have. Nowadays, everyone writing a biography has to answer or try and answer these questions. So this genealogical information or family heritage information is not something only to family members. It's probably something that interests many people, and those are questions very hard to answer. As everyone who has tried to search for his family history knows, the best questions are almost never the one answered in documents. When you have a birth certificate or a birth registry, it doesn't mention how the woman felt giving birth, how the father felt seeing his newborn baby. It doesn't say how long were the labors. Did he cry on the first moment or not? And how did his siblings react when they came back home? And those are the most intimate and probably the most interesting information of this all. The year and the date and the hour is nice, but it's not the core of the story itself. It's only quite a framework. And so those questions, which are the heart of this thing, this is what we're trying to get. We want to get to know our ancestors. We want to know not only where they lived or where and when they were born and passed away, we want to know who they were. And those questions are the most interesting and definitely the most hard to answer. So the way we do it, and when I say we, these are old pictures, I'm sorry that it's not very up to date, but you can see here my boss, Anna Przebyszewska-Drozd, who has been working for the Institute and Center for over 15 years now, probably 17 years. She wouldn't like me to say this, but she is. And you can see my colleagues, Ola and Marta, which is now on maternity leave, and probably Marta has just recently left the department. So what we're trying to mimic in those pictures is the way we work. Since the essential part of the work is telling a story, is not finding a matzeva, is not finding the year of birth of some ancestors. The essence is connecting these dots, is building a life story. But we're trying to make it as storytelling, sitting and talking and telling and retelling the story in different ways, based on the facts we know, based on the framework, trying to understand not only the frameworks, but the story itself. And this is, I think, where we are unique and where we are most handy. Because the essentials of genealogical research is get documentation, find get vital records, birth registries, marriage, death registries, find out who people, like how people were related, the names of the parents, siblings, cousins, where they worked. And then still you have the questions, who were these people? How do you tell their life stories? And sometimes in this documentation, there is some clues. Sometimes it says, the recently deceased woman married her son. Now we have something. We can imagine a woman who lost her husband a few months or years ago, marrying her son. This is, excuse me? No, like a company to marry. Mechatenet, not mitchatenet.
No insult.
Yeah, hopefully not. How would you say it in English? Marrying up. Thank you for this. Yes, but accompanying her son to walking down the aisle, which you don't do in at those times. You didn't do it too fast. Being with him under the chuppah. Once again, not as different. But sometimes in those documents you do have clues, and sometimes when you through these clues you can get more documents, because if we know where someone was born and when they died, what did they do in the meantime? They worked. Maybe you can find something about their work. Maybe they studied. Maybe you can find something through this. Maybe they had siblings who emigrated, and they, through all the little details in life, you can find documentation that would fit in and fill in some of the gaps. And the way we think it should be done is through telling a story. Telling a story, seeing where there are gaps to fill, and trying to understand how to fill these gaps. And in this instance, for those matters, sitting with people or having a long conversation with people is essential, and I'll get to how to try to do it later. So genealogy is not building this family tree with zillions of names or having your family of aristocratic descent, which is what every Polish Catholic family wants for itself, to see it's connected somehow to a Szlachta family. But it's something a little else. And Polish Jewish genealogy is sometimes even has its own twist to this. Polish Jewish genealogy sometimes is about demons and about corpses in the mud. And what you see here is a few examples of these demons based on the same piece of art. Anyone recognizes the picture on the right-hand side? The Dibbel. Originally zwischen zwei Welten, between two words. This is the original poster of the Vilnius group, the Vilnius group, doing the Dibbel for the first time in Warsaw. The world premiere was in Warsaw by a Vilnius group. Hanna Bobina, the founder of Bima, later was the main actress of this. And this is the original poster. And if you have seen the Dibbel or read or seen the movie, you know that ghosts come back to haunt the lives of the living. And I think Ansky's play, the book is, see, it's about to fall. He didn't know how prophetic it would be when he wrote it, and he wrote it during World War I in Moscow. The poster on the left is called Demon. It's a contemporary Polish film, I think, published, went to the cinemas about 4 years ago, and it's a modern version of the book. It's about an Israeli Jewish guy of Polish descent coming to Poland on business and marrying a Polish Catholic woman. And all of the movie takes place at their wedding, which is held on a countryside. Anyone seen the movie? Itai Tiran is playing there. He's a group. He speaks quite interesting Polish there. and you can see his name over there. But it's a Polish production. He's the only non-Polish actor. And in this version as well, it's not like the original. It's not that Raanana, the groom who was promised to the bride, is coming back to haunt her and so on. But different ghosts come to haunt the participants of this wedding. And telling the history of Polish Jews in Anski's time, 1918, the book was written, and it was held, I think, 1921. And also in today's world, it's literally finding corpses in the mud or dealing with demons. And it makes it much more interesting and complex. Because I will try to phrase it this way. There used to be a great Polish-Jewish society, civilization. They were both very Polish, even their patriotism and nationality, language, cultural habits, and so on, but very inherently Jewish, also in culture, in connection to other Jewish communities, etc. Nowadays, these things doesn't really exist. There is no Polish Jewish identity or a big social group. Most of the descendants of Polish Jews has left Poland and have not kept touch to their Polish identity of the group they come from. Most of us, and I'm saying us because I'm suggesting a lot of people here are from Polish Jewish descent. Most of us don't speak Polish. Some of us speak Yiddish. Most of us doesn't speak Russian. And those are basic three languages you need to know when you want to deal with those people. These were the primary languages they spoke. Very few of them spoke Hebrew, not to mention English. They spoke Yiddish at home, Russian outside, Polish with a clerk, and vice versa. And so for a descendant of Polish Jewry living outside Poland to try and understand the story of his family, how can he do it not understanding the languages they spoke, the language the documents are written? And it has a different twist in Polish Jews who stayed in Poland. And there were a few thousands to tens of thousands of them, about 30,000, stayed in Poland after 1968, and I won't go into Polish history of those times. Most of the Jews who stayed in Poland, besides a very small number, didn't stay in touch with their Jewish heritage. So there are people today coming to us saying, I have Jewish roots, or I think I have Jewish roots, or I stipulate I might have Jewish roots, and they have no idea how to touch these parts of the heritage, because for members of Polish Jewry who stayed in Poland, they left the Jewish part of the equation. So if there used to be a Polish, comma, Jewish identity, the comma is not there. It's either Polish or Jewish, and the re-hyphening of this identity is something that is being done in the last 5 years. So people of Polish Jewry who are trying to find and who left the country need someone to facilitate, to translate things for them. Some of the people cannot even pronounce the towns where the family came from. And people from within Poland who are trying to find for their family roots, they don't understand how Jewish families behave, because Jewish families behaved and went on with their lives in different ways than Polish Catholic families. Lived in different societies, moved much more, went to different schools in different times. It's something a proper Catholic family would not do those times. So someone needs there to facilitate, to bridge this gap, and this is what we're trying to do. The story is a very interesting one. We'll get to this here. So what can be found? Many things. And it really varies on the story of your family. and of the people you're trying to find information about. You can find everything from, in the center here we have registry of birth, written in Polish from the 1920s. We have a registry of residency from Pawianica, town next to Łódź, also from the 1920s, where you can see name, last names, occupations, address, names of parents, maiden names of the mother. And this was used to reconnect two half-siblings. A woman in Israel, a woman in Poland that came to us and say, I know about 75 years of age, knows her father was Jewish, knows the father emigrated to Palestine, Israel, and he left her with her mom in Poland. We were able to locate the family in Israel, find out that this person has recently passed away, but locate his kids and phone the kids and tell them, look, you have a half-sister in Poland. Do you want to meet her? Do you want to know the family history in Poland? They were shocked, but this is this family, the Berkowicz family of Pawianica. They met in Szczecin. It was really nice. It's called the Szczeciners. So if in some places in Poland such registry lists, residency lists, exist, in some, none. If you have here on the left-hand side, on the bottom, you can see a passport. In the middle, you can see list of, yeah, it's not a phone book, but it's a business registry, and sometimes it has phones. On the bottom right-hand side, you can see immigration records. This is Ellis Island Registry. On the top right-hand side, you can see questionnaires that were filled for various purposes. This one was filled in the workplace. So if someone worked at the Academy of Fine Arts, like this person to the right-hand side, you go to the archive of the Academy of Fine Arts in Warsaw, and you have his personal files. I'm sorry, there was a question.
Just ask the name of the passport holder.
If it would be your father, it would be very interesting because you would be the never known aunt. This person is my grandfather. His name is Shimon Kalendel, and as far as we know, he had only one daughter, and that's my mother. If there would be something else, it would be incredible. There is no one straight answer for this because those are all specific details, and they're everything here is 20th century documents. Okay, but some birth registries you can go sometimes up until 1790. Residence registries, it depends where. There are sometimes 1750s, or even you can have a Krakow list of registered Jews from about 1450. It would be very hard to trace your families since there are no last names, right? And it would be Yidel, son of Yankel, the milkman. Is he related? Who knows? But there is no one straight answer for all of this because every town has different records. One year there was a flood, and the book of birth from this year is gone. So this is why we have to tell the story detail by detail, and Taylor made a search for every kind of story. And university, there are university records. It's even more complicated. I won't go into. But I won't finish there because there are more things to be found. There are matzevas, which sometimes can tell you a great deal of things about someone. Their parents, sometimes their maiden name, sometimes and when it's a rabbi, especially an important one, you can find his biological ancestry and his ideological ancestry, sometimes written on the gravestone. He is the son of this rabbi, who was the son of that rabbi, who is the son of this maggid of somewhere. And he studied at this rabbi in Berlin, and later this rabbi in Lublin, and so on and so on. And it goes more. For people who are, this is the Reich family from Belgium. This is the gravestone. And this is the first page of a book. This Menachem Mendel Reich from Belgium, in Yiddish, has published. And it has the name of his parents here and where he studied. He studied at Rabbi Elimelech, who studied at Rabbi Eliezer Amsterdamer, and so on and so on and so on. So those are also genealogical resources. Sometimes you can find interesting information on newspapers. This is the necrologia, the death notices from quite well-known Polish language Jewish newspapers from Warsaw in the 1920s, called Nasz Przegląd, our point of view. And this Koppel Wiedersehen, or is more common known Koppel Moel, was the most well-known Moel of Warsaw, who died, I don't remember the year directly. If you go to the Warsaw Okopowa Cemetery, you will find his matzeva with a very funny sentence. The joke works only in Hebrew. How is it? Excuse me? כן, רוב האנשים אני מניח מדברים עברית קצת, אבל אני לא זוכר את החצי הראשון, החצי השני זה חרב פיפיות בידו. So it has something to do with him cutting whatever he needs to be cut. So you can find here who mourns him. His wife is his daughters. He has only daughters and not son. Thanks God for a while. He doesn't want his son to be circumcised by anyone else. And then also the people who marry, and you have where the family lived, the address, what exact time the funeral leaves the funeral house, etc. If people like the Stinkelhacken family, these are registries after the war in the Central Committee of Polish Jews, which have a lot of information about the people, where they were during the war, and information from before the war. This specific person was the biological father of someone I met in Haifa. She only knew the last name of her family, that it was a family of doctors. She didn't know anything. And this is an aunt who she didn't know, who registered after the war and passed away. But through this information, we were able to locate her biological parents. This is her biological father, and this is his diploma for medicine from the Warsaw University in the 1930s. And this is him publishing himself as a gynecologist. Gynecolog, akushel is Mayaletes, yes, midwife, exactly. And you have the place where he held his clinic, exactly, and his phone number, telephone, that's number 6, which was quite an affluent part of Warsaw in the west, central west area. Yes. Yes.
The registry of Jews after the war, you say there, is that still in the Jewish Historical? Is that all?
Yes, it's in the Jewish Historical Institute, and it's not available online because of privacy restrictions. Some of those people are still alive, and it has personal information which, according to Polish law, is not to be published up to 100 years from the creation of this. Yes, you can write to us or write to the archives directly and find if there is anything like this.
Is it from all Jews all around Poland or just
all around Poland? If it's from Warsaw, there's even an online, you can find it through USHMM and through something I'll get to later, but we have registered from all over Poland. And not only Poland, by the way, also Polish Jews were, let's say, were in Belgium after the war as a DP camp. So there were lists from Belgium who were transferred to the Central Committee of Polish Jews, which says they are contemporary at Belgium, but this is their name, last name, the date of birth, and they come from this town. and they're alive, right? They're survivors. And so there's many things to be found. And like I said, every story is different. For every story, there is different information to be found. But there are basic rules and basic tools that you probably use in every story. And I'll try and do this quite shortly. The first thing I wrote here is tell the story backwards and forwards. When someone comes and sits after the introduction, hi, this is my name, this is more or less what I'm trying to do. Hello. Tell me about your family. Start with the last person to have been living in Poland, closest to you, but last chronologically speaking. And then start from as early in his life as possible. So I would personally say my mother was born in 1951 in Warsaw. Didn't do much in life until she was 6 years old and emigrated to Israel. But she lived, and then I would try and describe her family, right? Who her parents were, her siblings, which maybe we have one here, but as far as I know, she didn't have any. Probably no siblings there. And then try and do it backwards. And if someone would tell me, oh, I'm talking about my father who was born in 1920 in Lodz, and he left Poland after the war. So, okay, but let's start in the beginning. Before he left, he did a few things. He was born, he grew up, he had a family. Maybe he went to a cheder, maybe to a Poland, maybe to some other kind of primary school. Maybe he went to a university, rabbinical school, yeshiva, army. He worked somewhere to make a living. He had a life story before he left. Or before we get to don't run to the Holocaust. Try and tell life story chronologically forward this time. So start with the last person, but start as early in his life, and then go backwards and forwards, which every person you mentioned. He had an uncle who had a business of diamonds in Brussels. Okay, let's get to this uncle. Tell me the story from the beginning. And then backwards and forwards to try and organize the information and tell the story. And what do I do with this? I personally try to build a family tree with names, dates, and places, and crucial information about each member of the family, and then try and understand what information is available for this kind of family, for these towns, for these people, for this occupations and life story. I'm sorry, this is I was expecting. And those kind of things I try to put on this page. So the basic places to search would be, among others, but let's start with this. Immigration or emigration resources. For people who left Poland, because most of Polish Jews left Poland, there are some kind of immigration records. If they left to the United States, usually the Ellis Island records are the best places to search. If they left to Israel, Palestine, the Central Archive or History of Jewish People, this kind of nice acronym, has Aliyah records from about 1908, if I remember correctly, until the 1970s. The Jewish Agency, and not the State of Israel, was the body dealing with Aliyah requests and Aliyah approvals, even after the formation of the State of Israel. And so if people come to me and say, my family comes from Poland, I have no idea where from. It's the Goldman family, and I know the names of the parents. I have no idea what town do they come from. Usually without further information, it would be very hard for me to search. Try and get as much information. If you don't know where from Poland, try and get as much information about the moment in life just afterwards, which is immigration, leaving Poland, going to someplace else. And these places are usually, they have place of origin. Sometimes they have a person of contact in the place of origin and are quite useful for this. And after we dealt with this immigration, in many cases comes the war and the Holocaust. Yad Vashem is, of course, essential, especially the pages of testimony, which were given, and I will try and touch it in a second. The USHMM has an incredible amount of documentation, digitalized, indexed, and available online. Many people don't know it, but most information you can now request through a media request file and get it almost immediately to your emails.
What is this sample?
United States Holocaust Memorial.
Oh.
Whatever they lay their hands on and digitalize. Not only. So, first of all, the right people to ask this are the people from the USHMM, which I am not. But they have many Holocaust-related materials, camps, refugee lists, and so on. But not only. For example, if you talk about Polish Jewry, they have Lvov ghetto records, which are quite essential. And they have Jewish students at the Warsaw University from 1920 to 1939. Not Holocaust. Okay. But this is good. If someone went to Warsaw University at 1920, when he enrolled to studies, but you can. These are ways to go back. You start with the information you have as latest as possible, and with this you build the stones to expand the search and go back. So Yad Vashem and USHMM would be really the first places to start. But Agol's and International Tracing Services. I won't elaborate this, but try and ask if you're dealing with Yad Vashem or the USHMM. Try and ask them specifically, the Shirutei Yatz, the information resources at both institutions, has access to digital records from a German archives in Bad Arolsen, which might contain essential information from the German camp system and DP camps. And so in many Holocaust-related searches, try and contact those two bodies when you talk about Israel and the States, about this ITS. But our sense, it would take them years and years. But do you know how many records do they have? I sat with someone from the archives about 2 months ago. I would really not go to them putting this online. For the next 5 years, I would try through Yad Vashem or yes.
Online. But you can go to Yad Vashem or to their volume timing, and you can access the records in their own facilities and get them. So you don't have to contact them, you don't have to write to them on the phone, you can actually go and get them.
Okay, so thank you for this comment. This is very much correct.
I did both. I went to Yad Vashem to get records of my mother. I thought that I exhausted it. And then I saw that you can also write to the ITS in America. And they came up with many records and fascinating information that I had not at all known before. So I would suggest doing both.
But not only, the search system for the ITS owls and sources is horrible, horrible, horrible. If you're not an expert on it, and I have sat between 40 and 50 hours on the system, and I am a very much of a beginner in this. Writing to colleagues at both Washington Memorial Holocaust Museum and Yad Vashem, they found out much more because they know the system. So if you're really green at this, sitting next to it, unless it's very straightforward, I would recommend in any case to contact those people.
I've done a lot of political research on that, and just to answer the lady here who was talking about information before, the US Holocaust Museum recently uploaded a whole bunch of police files from the Warsaw Police force from the 1920s through to the 1940s. And I was searching for it. I thought, okay, I see any of my family names are there. And the one person I didn't expect to find was actually who left Poland before the war and survived in England. And he turned out to be somebody who was wanted by the police. So it was actually a photo of 1929, which I've never seen before. And this whole police file in Polish about it because he left the country while he was wanted. And so I just wanted to say to that lady, we might find something unexpected.
I guess you're referring to 1850s or something like this, but
The latest member of my family left Poland, left in 1907 at the age of 15, and all of the others were before that. So
we won't have time to go into individual stories at the moment, but there are.
We need questions to the end.
Okay. And then the last place I wrote is our institute, because unfortunately, because of Polish privacy laws, we cannot publish our indexes and documents online, but you are very much welcome to contact or our department or the archive directly. There is an archivist working with the documents. There is our department who's trying to do a wider search. Contact us, tell us the family stories, try and see if we have any records about the family. Most of the records in our archives are post-war survivor documentation, some war documentation, very few before the war. And then you go on, but I guess those information most of you know. And then you get to the rich, endless part of Polish documentation in Polish archives, Polish institutions, etc., etc. And then the basic things you need to know. IGRA Poland, I guess most of you heard about them, know what they're doing. Incredible project, incredibly useful for me in everyday research, and also Jewish Gen. I guess you don't need me to talk to you about those, but those are usually also my first stop. But then I go to a few things you might not know and use very much is local Polish archives databases. And those are Pradziad and EDA databases, both of the National Archives of Poland. And I will touch it later, but basically Pradziad, the first one, is for vital records. It tells you for each town, village, city, what vital records from which years are in existence and who holds them. Vital records, birth, yes, birth, marriage, death registries. And the second one is local registries like residence registries. In Poland, there are two types of resident registries: censuses, voters lists, teachers lists, etc. And those kind of local, and in Poland, it's two types of documents, because the first is about people. It's about specific people, and when people move, those documents tend to move with them. And the second one is about a place. So if there is a building registry record, it is connected to the building, not to the person living in the building. So when cities like Lviv, who used to be a major Polish city, now in Ukraine called Lviv, when there was a change of population, Polish Catholics and Polish Jews left Lviv after the war, and Ukrainians and Pravoslav people went into the city. The vital records left with the people, the contemporary residence records, census records, and so on stayed in the city. So those are two different sets of documents, which sometimes are to be found in completely different places. And the last thing is cemetery records. And I'll touch this. There is one central database for this, the central documentation for Polish Jewish cemeteries. But in some towns, there are also local projects of documentation, indexation, photographization of cemeteries. And if you And sometimes there are 4 places where you can find an index of a specific cemetery. If you take the Częstochowa cemetery, is a good example. There's the IGRA, the database, Częstochowa Radomsko Area Research Group. There is the Gidonim project done by the Reut High School in Jerusalem, which indexes some cemeteries in Poland. There is a local Częstochowa museum branch dealing with this, who published a beautiful, incredibly helpful book about the cemetery. And you can, and not a single collection is full. Sometimes you need to search every collection to find what you need. But this is also quite essential when you talk about information from Poland. Yad Vashem, so even I guess you have seen this page and know this. My tip, look at the person giving the testimony, because this is essential. And sometimes it's not written here at the metadata, because it's information about people who are alive and their addresses, sometimes from a few years ago, like this one for 1999. You can see who the people who gave the testimony and what their relation is to the deceased. And it's almost always deceased, because it's pages of testimonies about people who have passed away. Also remember, you can contact the Yad Vashem information services. Someone told me there used to be a testimony page of my uncle, and now it's not there. What happened? Sometimes they remove pages from their website, because sometimes they find out that those people haven't passed away. I once came an Italian family who told the story and so on. We searched through Yad Vashem. We see a page of testimony for the father of the 2 brothers sitting there. And the story, the father went with the Polish Mandel's army from Russia, Iran, Iraq, Israel, and came to Monte Cassino in Italy, fought there, stayed there, met a nice Italian woman, married, and was never in touch with the other family that survived the war and lived someplace else. So the family in Israel wrote a page of testimony about this brother who they thought perished because he never contacted, but he was living in Rome, not so far away. And so there was a page of testimony. And so the first thing would be to connect the families. Hi guys, you have a cousins in Italy. Nice to meet you. And the second thing, inform Yad Vashem, and they take the page of testimony is in their archive, but it's not available online, because it's not a name of a Holocaust victim. He survived. He lived in Rome after the war. So try and contact Yad Vashem. They have information which they do not publish online. And look who the people who gave things are. USHMM, I said, there is in many cases, in this print sheet, there isn't a link to this, a media request form when you can have the media, the document itself immediately online. And now, probably the most important tip. Behind every list, there are documents. When you go to JRI Poland and see this index table about the Rice family from Belgice in this case, you know that Clementa Rice was born in 1837 and was passed away and so on. But you don't see here almost no information. And when I went into the birth registry, we have to remember that each line like this comes from a document. This is how a document looks like. Sometimes JRI Poland did almost all the work for us. They connected between the scans of online made by the Polish National Archives. You can see here, this is the website of the Polish National Archives, or Szukaj Archiwa, search in the archives. And they contacted this record here to the scan over here. The only thing you need to do is the view image. And when you open this, you have this file, a beautifully written, handwritten file in Polish, which tells a story. This is not the best resolution for me to read, but I will try to do this. Yeah. Działo się w Bełżycach dnia 25 lutego. So 25th of February at this town came this person. His parents' names are this and this. He's 27 years old. He's a carpenter. He is Jewish. He comes with two witnesses. One of them is the rabbi of the synagogue. The other is a teacher in town. They are both born and living in this town. He's 41. The other guy is 56. And they declared that on this day, in this year, in this hour, was born from his wife, or sometimes not declared wife, because there wasn't a separate registry, and the wife's name, age, sometimes father's name, sometimes maiden name, and then the name of the child, and the exact hour where the birth took place. And this is incredible amount of information. None of it exists here. And sometimes it says that the mother is only the mother is registered because the father is not alive anymore. And then it's an information you would never find in index, but it's incredibly essential when you think about family history. Once it tells you that the father passed away probably year before that, and it also gives you some kind of hints to the situation. What I was trying to say before, how did people feel? When you talk about a birth of a son, of a father who recently passed away, it's a different kind of feeling than different birth where the father is together with the mother. And so remember this, there are documents behind every line of index and table you see there. Go to the document, try and read this if you can. And this is where this Prajat and Ella websites come in handy. They show you where the documents are kept. Because sometimes the RI Poland or Jewish Gem says, yeah, we went to the archives, we sat there with the books, we indexed, we threw the tables online, and now you have the index. But you don't know where the archives is. You don't know which books are there. You don't know what's written in the document itself. And sometimes what you do also, or you go to the archives, which I like very much, or you need to order the record from the archives. And to know how to do it, you need to understand how it's being done. So I went to this project website, and you have seen the link here before. This is the link over there. Archiva, go to the LSS project, and so on. And if you want the ELA database, you just replace this project from N to ELA. The project one is a nice name for a database because Prajatek is like great grandfather. In Polish, it sounds better. I'm sorry if you don't get the joke. So when going to this Praja database and writing the name Plońsk, or Płońsk in Polish, the place of birth for David of Gulen, and many others, you get this kind of list. And you can see that for Evangelicko Augsburgi, so for Lutherans, there is alegatas, so announcements for marriage in these years. There is marriage records in these years, birth records, at those years, and death for those years. And then comes our parts, Mojżeszowe, people of the Mosaic persuasion, Jews. Then you have wedding announcements, but not only announcements, files. Like today, if you get married in Israel, you need to open a file at the rabbinical institution, and you need to give them your birth certificate, confirmation that you're single, and so on. Those kind of files happen. You have to give them to the civil registry office of Polish as well. So those files are kept in those years. Marriage records from 1826, back enough for you? Yeah, I guess so. In Płońsk, there are marriage records from 1826 until 1871. Then there is a gap of a couple of years, and then it goes on. and there are birth records. And if I would click here on the more, więcej in Polish, I would see, or maybe even let's do it now here. Oh. This is the database. Let's do points. It opens this, and when I click here on the więcej or more, it would tell me that points in the region of Ciechanów, the Mazowiecki region, Jewish records, marriage for these years are kept at the Polish National Archives in Warsaw, the branch in Mława. I have the address, phone number, fax, and most importantly, email. And then if I know that I have someone who probably married in points at those years, and I don't find it on JRI Poland because they haven't indexed it, or if they index until 1904, or they haven't researched it, or they might have, I want to double check because they might have put in wrong spellings or something like this, you can just write to the archives and tell them, I want to search for this marriage record for a Jewish family in this town in these years. Let me know if you find anything. Usually the price is funny. It's something like they need to scan it and send it to you. It's 2 or 4 zlotys, which are 2 or 4 shekels per scan. If they need to search intensively, they charge some 20 shekels zloty per hours of search. And then you need to transfer the money and they send it to you.
Is there an indicator if it's already been spent?
Excuse me? If you go to the Polish National website, the Polish National Archives website, Szukaj Archiwa, you can search there and see if it's already online. But it would be easier to write the archives, and they would send you the link to this, and try and search yourself if you're not familiar with the system. Yes. They won't scan it themselves if it's already scanned. Yes, because unfortunately, the language in Poland is Polish. Have you tried Google Translate? Because it's, it's a sztans, it's a szablona.
Can we please let
Yeah, so, but this will take only a second. You can write in English, they are required by law to reply in Polish. If you don't understand the reply, if they send it through a Word doc, just throw it into Google Translate. The documents are in Polish. Or in Russian. What were you expecting? So there you need a professional to read it and extract the information. But okay, we have very short time. Someone here. So and this is when I said about cemetery records. So when you search through the I've now forgot the name, the central database for Polish Jewish cemeteries, you can find pictures of the graves with the surname, Hebrew name, father's name, and other information. Yes. Foundation of Right Jewish Cemeteries Poland, you get there. No, it's not. They founded it. The two people who created most of it are young people called Alicja Mroczkowska and Witold Przaszyński. Some of the funding came from Monica Krawczyk, but it's unrelated. Now let's get to my last 10 minutes. What will happen this summer in Poland? So, have anyone here been to an IAJGS conference? Okay, so probably most of you in Jerusalem was 2 or 3 years ago. So, for first time in history, I think IAJGS conferences were in Europe 2 times, once in London, once in Paris. And since most of definitely American jewelry, but if you would go 150 years backwards, most of world jewelry lived in Central Eastern Europe. IAJGS conferences never went to the source or the largest source of the Jewish people in modern times, and it's great news that finally, after quite a long time, people are feeling safe enough to do these kind of conferences in Poland. And why not? You would be, if anyone hasn't visited Warsaw, you'll be happy to know that it's a quite modern town. It has great infrastructure when it comes to tourism. This summer, it was the most popular tourist destination for Israelis, as over 200,000 came to Poland, most of them to Warsaw. About 40,000 of them were in groups in mishlachot and tours, something like this. But it was the most popular tourist destination, which is unheard of. And I saw it changing in the last 5 years. 3 years ago, there were many Hebrew speakers and Israelis around. Now there's just huge numbers. And it works. So it's friendly, it's safe, it's easy, and it's cheap. Sorry to say, or not sorry to say. For me, it's better. And the conference will be a normal IAJGS conference. It will be held in English. If you haven't written your call for papers, you should have been doing this until the December 31st. You're a bit late, but early registration should be open probably February. And the conference will be held in the Hilton Museum. If you heard otherwise, because it was originally planned to be held at the Polin Museum, and I say Hilton Hotel, not museum, sorry. So it's not at the Polin Museum to the History of Polish Jews, but in the Hilton itself, because the organizers wanted one place for everything related, so people don't have to schlep around from hotels to the museum to talk at this place and then go back to the hotel for lunch or anything like this. Everything will be at the same place, but the great advantage is that it's local, and it has at least 3 sides. The first thing, you can combine a visit to your local town, city, shtetl, wherever it is in Poland, Ukraine, Lithuania, Romania, Czech Republic, Austria. Everything is a train or sometimes a bus ride or a short flight away. And those are the areas where most of the world jewelry came from, definitely Ashkenazi jewelry. And so local in this way, use the opportunity to visit your local town or city. The second instance is local speakers. People you usually don't hear in Israel or in the States are local Polish people dealing with those matters. The best people to talk to about the Lodz Cemetery is the couple that runs the cemetery for the last 20 years. Their English is so-so, but if you haven't visited there, you probably never met them. And the best person to talk to about Drohobych is a young Ukrainian guy who fell in love with the Jewish history of Drohobych while working at the city museum. And he opened a website and online newspapers in Ukrainian, and is getting to Drohobych's descendants everywhere, collecting information. He is a walking encyclopedia. He speaks Ukrainian, okay Polish, okay English. If you want to know something, and he knows the people in the archives in Drogovic and so on and so on, he is an incredible source. You probably never spoke to him or met him or heard him speak if you haven't gone to Drogovic or met him in Warsaw in the last year. So meeting local experts like those people, and I really hope that they will accept his talk, which I suggested and recommended. This is invaluable for people researching those areas. And the last thing, you have local resources, local archives, local documentation, which sometimes the barrier of language and distance is hard to bridge and gap. You can go to the archive, search in the archives. And in the archives, you would have people who read Russian and Polish because this is their work. So instead of getting those documents and trying to decipher them or finding someone who reads 19th century handwritten Russian in Raanana or Valsaba, or there are people who it's their work in the archives. So great advantages for everyone planning to visit. And I think now is a good time to open this for questions.
How many people do you think you expect to attend?
Oh, that's a very good question. A normal IJGS conference is from 600 to 1,000 people.
Wow.
The biggest conference so far was 1,400. If you ask me, I think we'll surpass it. Before we even announced, there was a group of 200 people who booked hotel rooms before it was even announced. The demand is huge. People are very much interested, and I hope if there will be no bumps in the road or some political or other kind of glitches around, people would feel safe to come, and we will have over 1,000, hopefully over 1,200 that can be. I would have this slide stay on the screen. If you want to contact us at the Jewish Historical Institute, you will have here the family heritage, the genealogical department email, our website. You can find us on Facebook and see some of the stories we published and some of the information we throw, or contact us through Facebook. Better do it via email. The number of business cards I have here is quite limited. I'm sorry, I gave too much on my visit here. But this was really my last words, and now we are in time for questions. Thank you. Yes.
I don't know if you know the answer, but I saw an interesting film that I would like to recommend for the conference right now.
And the best person to contact is Robin Magid. She's the chair of the conference for the IAJGS. You can find her email in when you go to iajgs2018.org. You will find a contact form over there. There's still no subcommittees defined, and there will be a subcommittee for programming for the film festival and so on and so on. And she will direct it to the right person when this person will be nominated. But there's still no one at the time being. But she is the right top. Yeah. But what is the film you want to recommend? This one.
It was a Dutch story about Peter Vincent. It was on European television.
Okay. Yes, please.
I'm considering a few days visit in January to see the Jewish Museum.
First of all, you're brave. January can be quite. Okay. Yes. The gentleman here is considering a few days visit in January for the Jewish Museum, and he asked for my opinion. First, you're brave. January can be quite chilly, and chilly not on Raanana standards.
Definitely chilly inside.
No, hopefully not. No, usually, look, the temperature inside is much warmer than here inside. But outside it can get to -20 and even more centigrade. Okay, I'm very bad at deciphering English accents. I wasn't even trying. I would mistake you for, you know, a Cape Town accent or something, and it never snows. So first of all, I would very much recommend visiting Poland and visiting what you refer to as the Jewish Museum. The official name is Polin Museum, the Museum of History of Polish People. It's an incredible museum, an incredibly huge museum. It has exhibitions about 1,000 years of history of Polish Jewry, and it doesn't end in the Holocaust. It goes on to contemporary times and so on. I would, since it's a huge museum, I would try and dedicate at least a full day or sometimes 2 half days to visit the museum, because in 3 hours you're running through the exhibition. And
2 days. That's the language there.
it's the main languages are English and Polish. You can have audio guides in Hebrew, in Yiddish as well if you want, in Russian, Spanish. I guess you're covered. The museum is new. It was opened some 3 years ago. World-class museum. It was awarded the best museum in Europe for 2016, if I remember correctly. So first, it's quite good, and second, you won't be the first non-Poles visiting. So I would very much recommend. But Warsaw is a city full of historical places, resources, and a very nice city to visit. You don't need me as the trip advisor, but try and spend a little time outside the museum as well.
And I think it's worth mentioning, maybe go along on the Facebook page for the conference. There is a listing for people who want to travel to different places. There's a travel agency that's getting together and they're arranging trips. So if you go onto the Facebook page, you can register. Which Facebook page? Of the conference.
There is a 2018 IAJGS Warsaw conference. There is a Facebook group with information, and I think the agreement is not signed, but the tour agencies as a close.
Yeah, there's actually an Excel spreadsheet that you can put on the place where you want to go in your name, and they're collecting them together so that they will arrange different trips.
Because there will be not enough guides for the amount of people who want to visit those kind of places. So to group people and send them with the best guides and the most knowledgeable people about the places to visit, resources around, and so on, would be essential to have a better visiting experience. I would really recommend doing this through the tour operator, which are the Taube Heritage Tours, which are a close. We cooperate on a daily basis, and we are also funded by the same Taube. The Taube Foundation.
Talbot.
No, Taube.
Taube.
Exactly. It's called Taube Jewish Heritage Tours in Poland. Yes, please.
Speaking of,
Do you want the microphone to? Yeah. I think you have important things to say.
Oh, I thank you very much. Thank you. My name is Nina Zilberman, and I represent the Talbot Foundation in Sighet, which is in the Maramuresh region in the country of Romania. Some of you might recall, if you have ancestors or roots there, that for a time it was under Hungarian government or regime. In any case, today it's Romania. I do spend there a lot of time, and one of the things that the foundation is planning is a symposium in Sighet, post-conference time, with the opportunity to visit in the area, and also we are extending to the Bukovina area, because these are the two major areas and regions that were affected. The Jewry was affected by the Holocaust. The Bukovina people were transported, deported to a blackout. Thank you, to Transnistria, right? And all the Jews from Maramuresh were taken to Auschwitz, including my family as well. So at the entrance, you have this postcard. We will have a Dr. Menachem Karen Pratt as the scholar in residence. And we'll have a 4-day program, which includes 2 days as well as visiting the area. We, the foundation has year-round, anyways, roots to roots journeys. Thank you so very much.
And I would also recommend to, if you have a specific place of interest, like Sticket or the area, try and contact the special interest group, or SIG, as it is usually referred in IAJGS jargon, and see if there are any other similar things. Gesher Galicia is planning one-day seminars during the conference, different story, huge fight over there, but other special interest groups are also organizing tours, symposiums, and so on. Try and contact your local area of interest. Yes.
I was looking for specific information that will be in Shemesh IGRA.
So if I would go back to what it's a hard question to answer because there is no general area. So Lishan and Shemesh usually documentation is in Shemesh archives, sometimes Sanok archives, sometimes Sheshuv archives. The question is, what Lishan has very few records. So we have to understand the years of the family lived there, where exactly they lived, who was born in which year, and then through those Praja and Ella databases, you can try and see what documentation you have.
Especially the Shemesh.
Okay. So it really, once again, it depends on the family story you have. I would start with general Poland, and then and map the family and what you have there. Try and order records which are online there, and then see what other databases are available for Przemysl and for Leżajsk in Polish, to the Polish National Archives database that I showed, the ELA database especially. And Przemysl is a huge city, a big city. There are many databases considering. There's USCO books. So I try to give the basic answers, but it's never the only basis. Each family has its own story and different kind of information, and it would be very hard for me to answer any such question. Yes, please.
A very practical question. You said the IAJGS does genealogical research for people. You charge for that?
Oh, that's a very good and practical question. No, we don't. Our institution is not, our department is not financed by the institution, which is governmentally funded. We are working on donations from our guests and clients, and also from some foundations that are supporting our actions. We do not charge it. We are working with thousands of cases and families each year. We will not be your private researchers. We cannot go to the archive for you or spend a week on the case, but we can definitely spend, if you're coming to Poland, a few hours sitting with us, telling the story, seeing what is there to be found, and when we would recommend you to go, or correspond with us in lengthy emails about the family stories, and we will try to do the same thing, find information. We have in our archives available online or historical newspapers, handwritten books, and so on and so on. And what we don't think we have time, but is worth considering in your research, directly to the right place. Yes, please.
Quick question about the use of first names in Poland. I've come across people that have a different first name in the GRI listing, which is in Polish, to the one that maybe the family used, to the one perhaps that was used in naturalization documents in the UK, referring back to, they perhaps anglicized the name a bit when they were naturalizing, talking about their parents when they were naturalized. Is there any sort of general rule about which is best to look for?
No, there is no rule, because we have to remember that we are now talking about a central computerized database and one version of the name. My name is Matan. It has a certain spelling in Hebrew and a certain spelling in Latin. And this is how it's written in my birth certificate and in my passport. If I go to the airline and I would spell my name differently, if I would spell it with a TH and not with a T, it wouldn't be me. We're not talking about those times. If the name would be written in Hebrew or in Yiddish, it would be written.
Did they change the names radically when they registered?
No, they didn't. The names remained. It has different versions and different spellings. And even if you talk about a simple thing, a name like David or David. So even if you talk only about this variation of the name, it had different spellings in different languages because Polish is not English, it's not Russian, and it's not Hebrew or Yiddish. And then it can be Davidel, it can be Yudi, it could be definitely many variations even in this, and this is the most simple name. Then go to Menachem or Mendel, and then to Freud or Fischer, and then try and people who Zwienhouse is also one of the simple ones. And then
I've had worse.
yes, so you always have to keep on an open mind and understand that people use different names in different times. So and when people don't understand this, I ask them to tell me what is the first name of Helzer. Anyone else? Or remembers?
Conrad.
Theodore? I remember it.
Yes, but I found something by Warren Blatt, which is all about Jewish given names.
All right.
So there are
different spellings,
all right.
the different forms.
There are many. Warren Blatt is a great one. Alexander Weidel is also a great source for first names and surnames. But we really have to remember that it's not centralized, computerized database. Different people write the names and use different versions or adaptations of the name different times. Yes, please.
I have a question. Is there any way of telling the early register of family people at the place?
Left a place, left one town to a different town?
Or left the town completely?
There should have been. So in Poland, even nowadays, if you move from one city to another city, you need to have an exit registry from this city and an entry registry at the different town.
Why would like to be left Poland in the 191800s?
So I'm saying, even if you leave the city to a different city in Poland, you have to have an exit registry and you have to have it written in the registry, and the resident registry. It's called meldunek.
You said all the Jews got up and left at the end of the 19th century. But there's a record that
No, I never said this. I said that according to law, you should have such a record. In Warsaw, no. In Łódź, you might have. In which year, it varies from place to place. And sometimes people weren't registered as residents in the place where they live in, so there wouldn't be an exit registry. So it changes from a place to place and a story to a story. No general answers in this field. Forget about one. You would have to talk about a specific year, a specific place, and a specific family. Because sometimes family lived in a place but were registered in a different place.
Those who want to stay behind afterwards, we can spend a bit more time.
You mentioned that you don't have cards. Maybe you your name, phone number, and details.
So my name, if you hit it written, it's Matan Shefi. But you're welcome to contact anyone from the genealogical department. You have our email here and the other contact details if you want to call our office. Here.
Okay, thank you very much.